Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine.
Here's Perry, to Hurd. Here's the jump shot.
Jumps to Marley, a long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Another Sir Charles, and he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to the 7 Seconds or Less podcast. This is a podcast about the NBA with the Phoenix Suns focus. My name is Max McCauley, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, David Nash. David, it's just us today.
Just us today, Max, and it was very enjoyable to have both Callan and Cole on the last couple of episodes, and we do hope to have some more guests in the future, but for this one, the listeners are stuck with us.
Yeah, we're lacking the wisdom that Cole and Kellen bring this time. They were everything we could have hoped for and more, but hopefully we can be pretty decent too, because today we're going to be doing something that requires some wisdom, I would say. It's going to be it's a mock draft, but it's not the kind of mock draft you're used to. We're gonna put together the draft class from the last 4 drafts. So that's 2015, the Devin Booker, Karl-Anthony Towns, Kristaps Porzingis draft, through 2018, which is the Deandre Ayton, Luka Doncic draft. Obviously. David, this is going to be pretty fun.
So we're not just redrafting the 2018 class like some others have very recently, Max?
I got kind of in trouble for pointing that out, so I'm not even going to get into that. Yeah, so we're going to do that. That's going to be fun. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be a good exercise. But before we get into that, we're actually going to... There's a little bit of news. There's nothing earth-shattering that happened, but there's some Suns news. We have a couple stories here we want to get into, probably rapid-fire style, so... I'll just get right into it, David. What do you think of the Alec Peters signing in Russia?
It was a very interesting one. I'm very happy for Alec. Be good for him to get some minutes in a pretty competitive league. And I guess the main takeaway, though, means that the Suns have that open two-way spot, which is a bit of a watch this space. Not sure what's going to happen with that just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. Someone asked me on Twitter the other day if I had any idea, and I answered with no, because I don't have any idea what they're thinking with that.
Yeah, I think we will all just be guessing at the moment. But what did you think of Trevor Ariza taking Jared Dudley's number very, very quickly, Max?
My only take on this is that the Suns' Twitter account, when they tweeted a threeza after that happened, I really hope they don't say that at games. I can't handle that.
Yeah, I don't think I may need to unfollow if that is tweeted every time Ariza hits a 3 this year.
If Al McCoy starts saying it, I might cry. So what do you think about Darrell Arthur? Why is he not bought out yet?
I touched on this during the week. I think that he's a trade chip, Max. I think as long as he's not pushing for a buyout, the Suns can hold him on the roster for summer. They can hold more than 15 players for a while. So he's like $7.5 million. So that's an interesting salary that can be added to potential trades. I'm not going to say anything is imminent, but we might see something with Darrell and maybe somebody else being attached this offseason to pick up another ready-made player, I think. But speaking of ready-made players, Max, Len to the Hawks. Was that we kind of touched on that last episode, and Atlanta didn't come up, but what do you think of the fit?
I'm not really sure what you mean by calling him a ready-made player. Like, I don't know if that's good or bad. But Alex Len, listen, he's fine. I think he serves a role. He rebounded pretty well last year. He can play okay defense. He has stone hands from hell, so you're never going to be good with him on the court. You're just not. But, whatever. Atlanta's not going to be good. They have kind of a weird team. It's fine. Look, I don't have a huge, strong opinion on it. I thought it was a little bit of an okay, but not a big deal. But let's talk about Deandre Ayton's birthday. Do you have any special words for Deandre Ayton?
Happy birthday, big fella. Surely that's the only thing that really needs to be said. But turning 20 makes me feel incredibly old. But it also makes you realize just how young this Suns team is. So, yeah, happy birthday to Deandre. And do you have any further wishes for the big fella?
No, you just depressed me by making me realize that we're both a decade older than DeAndre Ayton.
What did you think of House signing with the Warriors? That kind of came out of left field a little bit.
It did. Daniel House just randomly tweeted on Twitter Golden State or something like that. It's like, whoa, are they signing you? But I actually thought Jeffrey Savage at Afflicted Med had my favorite take on this. It's like a hot take, but I actually like it. I think it's correct and not correct necessarily, but I think it's possible. And that's Daniel House has a pretty good chance to actually provide more value to the Warriors than Boogie Cousins does. Because Boogie Cousins may not even play. If he does come back late, I mean, you don't know how effective he's going to be. Daniel House can play. I like that guy a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Warriors, are learning from their mistakes of last year of having a million centers at the end of their bench. And, when injuries hit, they didn't really have a lot that they could do. And it meant that the big guys had to play, the majority of the minutes. So House is that kind of break glass in case of emergency type guy at the end of the bench for the Warriors. And yeah, I think, as you say, it's a good point. Could provide some pretty meaningful minutes early on if they get thin again at the wings.
And just to be clear, I'm not saying he's better than Boogie Cousins. I'm not an insane person.
I'm going to tweet that you said that straight after we finish recording.
Thank God we don't have aggregators. Just one last thing on House. Do you think this has anything to do with him going off in Golden State towards the end of last season, throwing that dunk off the backboard?
I think it always helps. There's always stories of guys playing well against certain coaches and those coaches going and getting them in the next off season and things like that. I definitely don't think he did himself any harm there. I would like to think that it was probably more to do with his summer league play with the Rockets and things like that rather than the off the backboard move by House, but I'm sure it raised their eyebrows a little bit at least.
Steve Kerr's always looking for things to keep his team motivated. Maybe off the backboard dunks is going to be it next year.
Yeah, he didn't like the Jordan Bell one though. Let's remember.
No, he did. I forgot about that. Yeah, he was really not happy about that. I think that's it for news. So, David, how about you get into the retro segment before we move on to the main section?
Will do, Max. With the departure of Jared Dudley last week, I thought it was only fair to dedicate this one to him on this episode. So, did you know Jared Dudley leads the entire 2007 NBA draft class in a single stat, Max? Any guesses what that might be?
Ooh, interesting. The whole 20... Oh, man, I wish I knew this. I don't know. I'm just going to say steals, but it's probably not steals.
He is the best three-point shooter out of the entire 2007 class. 39.6%, and it beats out the likes of Aaron Aflalo, Kevin Durant, and Mike Conley.
Kevin Durant's career three-point is not above that, huh?
Correct. Dudley was, of course, drafted by the Bobcats in 2007 with the number 22 overall pick, where he played a season and a half before being traded to the Phoenix Suns. So they were his first two teams, and Brooklyn is about to be his sixth. So, Max, I'm going to put you on the spot again here. Can you name the three in the middle? And for extra difficulty, can you name them in order?
So, okay. Bobcats, Suns. He went to the Clippers in that trade. We got Bledsoe in.
Correct.
He definitely went to the Bucks.
Correct.
Man, is there really one in between the Bucks and Suns? I'm forgetting. I am mind blanking on this. I don't got it. What do you got?
He had a fleeting moment with the Washington Wizards.
Oh, yeah. I remember that now. Okay.
Washington, in fact, are the only team he's made it out of without being traded. If you count the draft pick he was taken with, which was also traded in 2002 and 2004, before JMZ was drafted, Dudley has been involved in 7 NBA trades. Back to his time with the Suns, though. As mentioned, Dudley came to the desert along with Jason Richardson in a trade for Raja Bell, Boris Diaw, and Sean Singletary. A trade that you recently, Max, called one of the best in Suns' recent history. Is that right?
Well, I didn't realize we gave up Sean Singletary, so never mind.
It was in that first stint with the Suns that he probably played his best NBA basketball and perhaps had his best statistical season in the 2010-11 season that ended in 40-42 for the Suns. He played all 82 games that year, averaged 10.6 points, 3.9 rebounds, 1.3 assists, and 1.1 steals per game. He also shot 41.5% from 3 and 47.7% from the field. That season also, Max, marks the last time I saw the Phoenix Suns in person.
Aww.
I went to a few games in my time in Arizona, but the highlight was definitely a January 14 win over Portland and fellow Aussie Paddy Mills. I actually sat courtside that night. just 2 seats away from John McCain, of all people. And I stood in line for mac and cheese behind Robert Sava, and I watched Nash lead the Suns comeback with 23-13 for a 115-111 win over the Blazers.
You hung out with a lot of rich guys that night.
I did. Of course, on that night, Dudley was the only player who stopped next to the tunnel after warming up and took a picture with me. And I wouldn't expect anything less from Dudley. But I also remember he heard my accent and he asked where I was from and took some time to chat with me as well. So that was cool of him. He may not go down as one of the Suns' greats or anything like that, but he's definitely one of my faves, and I'm sure that's the same for a lot of the people listening to this pod. Finally, going back to his trade history in the league, Max, here are the highlights of the deals he was involved in. As I said before, Raja Bell and Boris Diaw went to Charlotte that first time. As you mentioned before, Bledsoe came to Phoenix in that second trade. The Clippers was a salary dump, which they had to attach a first to, which recently actually became OG Anunoby, Max. Milwaukee traded a 2020 second rounder, and now ending with Phoenix again, we obviously got Darrell Arthur and cap space. Cap space, Max, that was used to trade in Rashawn Holmes, who was drafted at 37 in which NBA draft? 2015. That, of course, is the first of 4 drafts we're about to jump right in right now and redraft for this episode. So, Max, it's over to you to run through the rules of our redraft.
Thank you, David. Before I do that, I do just want to give out a shout out to Jared Dudley because I absolutely love that dude. I remember. I think I was the first person probably to one of the first people to get a Suns Jared Dudley jersey because I fell in love with him this season before we were good with him. And my girlfriend actually got a custom-made Jared Dudley jersey for me because I talked about him so much. So, love Jared Dudley. Gonna miss him. I hope he has great success with whatever he does.
I agree.
Okay, let's get into this exercise. So, like I said before, we're going to be drafting the last 4 NBA draft classes. So that's 2015 through 2018. The way we're going to do this is we're going to consider these guys with all the information that we have now. We're not going to consider them as prospects. So, for example, Devin Booker was not a highly regarded prospect, so he wouldn't even have made the top 30 on this list had we made it that way. But because he's shown so much in the NBA so far, he will be drafted very highly on this list. So we're considering everything, so that might hurt the 18 guys, but it may or may not. We'll see about that. David, you have anything else to add to that? There might be some other rules I'm missing.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think you make a good point. I think there's some advantages and some disadvantages as I kind of ran through my big board for this for the 2018 guys. You know, not having any NBA film kind of can help some guys and hurt others. Vice versa with the other 3 draft classes. We've seen quite a bit of them, and that can hurt when trying to project where 2018 guys fit with the rest of them. I'd also just note there's obviously going to be a pretty wide variance in people's opinions on this, so it's a fun exercise for the long off season, but happy for anyone to disagree with us and let us know. But I expect some differences, and there's definitely going to be some differences just between you and I as well. But one thing I'll definitely note with the pre-draft 18 rankings, and going back to my little joke towards the ringer before, is I personally didn't change any of my pre-2018 rankings when slotting these guys in. So I haven't changed any order based on, 4 Summer League games or anything like that. It's just all about where you slot them in around those other 3 draft classes.
I think I made a couple of very slight adjustments, but nothing major. SGA is not going 3rd. One thing I did want to mention, though, a couple of rules I forgot. One, I don't think we're counting contracts here, but we are counting age.
Yes.
And the other thing is that we're drafting these guys in a vacuum. So, for example, if I draft Lonzo Ball, I can still draft, some point guard next. It's we're not building a team here. We're just saying who in a vacuum we like the most.
Very good point.
Cool. All right, let's get started. Do you have the coin flip to decide which one of us is going to get the top pick here?
I have a coin with me, Max, so I will leave it to you to call heads or tails.
Give me tails.
Alrighty. It is heads, unfortunately for you, which means I get the top pick.
I don't think we have the same guy up top. I haven't looked at your list, but I doubt we do, so I'm really not that sad about this.
It's not a Kareem coin flip, is that what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying, yeah.
All right, well, I'll kick us off. It's probably no surprise based on something I said last episode, but I am taking the number 1 pick from the 2016 draft, none other than my fellow Aussie, Ben Simmons. Any thoughts, Max?
Yeah, I like Ben Simmons a lot. He's third for me, and the only reason why he's third is because I value shooting so freaking much that it drops him down a little bit. But I mean, third obviously is great, and Ben Simmons is already a star, and he's awesome, and there's nothing wrong with taking him first.
Yep. I'm not going to disagree with too much of that. Obviously, I am still taking him as a prospect and expect him to add a jump shot in the subsequent years of this fake career of his. So I'm comfortable taking him number 1 in this list for that reason.
Yeah, I think it's a great pick, and I think it's going to be a more popular pick than my next pick, the number 2 pick, which is would have been my number 1 pick, and which is probably going to be pretty controversial. I'm taking the 3rd pick in the 2017 draft. His name's Jason Tatum.
Ooh, very interesting. What's your thought process there?
First thing I want to point out is that I was low on him and desperately did not want the Suns to get him, so this shows you how dumb I am. But the other and the reason why is because he didn't show a lot of the skills that he immediately had in the NBA at Duke. And really what he taught me to do, I learned a lot from him draft evaluation wise, and that's that you can't look at what a player is doing in college. You need to look at what a player can do, sort of, which can be a hard thing to divine, but it's something that you kind of have to do. And the thing about Jason Tatum is his rookie year, he was sort of good at everything. He was a pretty good defender. He was an elite shooter. He showed some on-ball, creation equity. He wasn't the best playmaker for others, but I think that he showed some capacity in that area, and it can get better. Yep. And then the thing that makes him the most intriguing to me is that, especially for an exercise like this where you're drafting a guy in a vacuum, Jason Tatum is like, you could fit any team around that guy. He's a 6'9" wing who does everything. Like that's the perfect thing you want. And not only that, he was the second best player on a team that was in the playoffs, that went to the Eastern Conference Finals Game 7, and he was the best player in that Game 7. So everything he showed, you can't really ask for a better rookie year out of a guy. So to me, Jason Tatum, he's the guy I take number 1. I don't think it's by far over the other guys, but for me, it's not a hard choice.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to note that the first kind of little group here of, maybe, I don't know where you cut it off, but maybe the first, 4 or 5 guys are all pretty close. We're kind of splitting hairs here a little bit, but I think you make a good point. If you're redrafting, you kind of want that NBA prototype, and Jason Tatum is certainly that, and didn't do himself any harm in his first season as an NBA player. So I don't quite have him that high, but I don't 100% disagree with your kind of justification there.
I'll be interested to see where you have him, because I think there's a clear top 4. So if he's in your top 4, I think we agree. But I think there's an actual clear tier of 4. But we'll see what you got.
I won't give away my next couple of picks, but he is number 4 to clarify. Okay. So, and I generally agree with that kind of top tier that you're mentioning there. So I'll jump right in and I'll take what I think is the best big in this redraft, and that is Karl Anthony Towns at number 3. He was the number 1 pick, of course, from the 2015 draft.
Yeah, I have him number 2 overall on my board, so I'm not going to complain that you took him there.
Yeah, and I think with that, I'll just kind of put a little bit of a spotlight on my process going through this whole draft, which will hopefully frame the remainder of my picks, and that's that, when I kind of looked into a whole bunch of different stats with these guys, but at the end of the day, when you were kind of comparing one against another prospect, it was essentially, would I trade player X for player Y right here, right now? And the answer was no when it came to, say, Ben Simmons, but the answer was yes for basically everybody that comes after Towns here. And what he's done so far in the 3 years of his career is pretty phenomenal for a big that generally takes a little bit longer to develop. So I'm pretty comfortable taking him at 2 on my board, and the way it kind of crumbles here with you and I alternating is that he's ultimately number 3 on our redraft.
Yeah, it's just kind of what happens when we have differences of opinion. But one more thing on Karl Anthony Towns, I think that people kind of overlook, is that he's being misused right now in Minnesota, and he's still incredible. Like, he's still putting up insane. I think he's on the path to being the second best big man shooter of all time behind Dirk, and who knows, maybe he can surpass him. But that's the trajectory he's on right now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And that's why I think he's kind of, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but he's kind of primed for the picking for a team to, throw a very enticing offer towards the Wolves if they, for whatever silly reason, decide to trade him away, because, yeah, I think he can be even better than what he currently is, which is certainly saying something.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because my number 4 pick overall is going to be actually my number 4 ranked player, and it's going to be Karl Anthony Towns' best friend, someone who I really hope he's traded to, is Devin Booker.
No surprises from me there. I had him one slot above, so obviously therefore above Jason Tatum, which, I'll probably be accused of being a little biased there, but I think what you touched on with Tatum in terms of playmaking and things like that is why I have Booker slightly ahead of Tatum. Just kind of worried what else Tatum, might bring to a winning team other than what he's done for now, which is totally unfair on him because he's only played one season. But again, when I put them both up against the wall, I'm more comfortable taking Booker at the moment. But 4 seems a pretty nice middle ground for someone like Booker. Any other thoughts on him?
Yeah, well, I do think Devin Booker, to your point, sort of has the higher tail end skills. Like, I think Devin Booker's crazy shooting ability from deep, off the catch, off range, off movement. Like, really, he has every sort of shooting versatility thing you need, which I think is probably a better skill than anything Jason Tatum has. Jason Tatum just has everything. I don't know if there's a weakness to Jason Tatum, and he's so young that it's kind of easy to project him to just get a lot better at a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that we should obviously note with Booker, which won't be a surprise to anyone listening, but does have some context when you look at some of these guys we might be drafting a little bit later, and that is that he was pick 13 in the 2015 draft, which is certainly an outlier with the rest of the guys that we are discussing in this kind of tier at the moment.
Yeah, the Suns really, really, really found a gem there. That's something you can really build your team around when you get a guy like him that late. And the last thing I'll mention on Booker before I let you make your next pick is that we are going to have a podcast all about Devin Booker in the next month. So that's kind of why we're giving him a short shrift here, because we're going to have a nice guest on and we're going to really break down Devin Booker.
Yep, so I'll jump straight into pick 5, I believe we're already up to, Max.
Yep.
We're running through this very quickly, but pick 5 is oddly the number 3 pick from the most recent 2018 draft.
From me.
That is Luka Doncic. So I'm interested to know, is this, I haven't quite tracked your big board at the moment, but is this where you had him as well?
Yeah, that's why I got really angry. I had him number 5, and the reason why he's 5 for me, I love Luka Doncic so much, but I just can't put any prospect above people who have shown what the 4 guys above him have shown.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a very clear line, I think, is what we kind of discussed before of these top 4 guys. We both love Doncic. I'm sure we'll both cop a little bit of heat for having him above DeAndre Ayton. I'll be interested to see where you have Ayton on your board following this. But yeah, there's a very clear line for me. As much as I love Doncic, you take the productivity of the first 4 guys over him right here, right now. But I'm very excited to see him play in the NBA and, maybe start to climb up that list very quickly if he can start hot.
Yeah, my only thing I'll say about Luka Doncic before I go into my pick is that for some reason he gets this label as not having high upside, which I don't get it at all, because if he makes even a small incremental athleticism jump, he's going to be a 6'8" playmaking wing. You can't have a better archetype than that. And with his natural vision, passing ability, shooting mechanics, he has the ability to be the best offensive player in the entire NBA. And as Cole said, he has the possibility to be the best player in the NBA. So I don't really get the low upside critique.
Yep, your turn at number 6.
I'm taking Jaren Jackson Jr., the Ringers' number 1 overall pick.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, give us a little snapshot into Jaren.
So, I love Jaren Jackson Jr. I've loved him since the first time I watched him play at Michigan State. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who's listened to me or followed me on Twitter that I'm picking him. I think he's got Defensive Player of the Year upside pretty clearly. I don't think anything he did in Summer League dissuaded me from that, because he was absolutely awesome in Summer League.
Yep.
Didn't he have separate games of 8 threes and then a different game where he had 7 blocks?
He certainly did.
How many players in the league right now could do something like that?
I wouldn't be able to count them on more than one hand, that's for sure.
The only guy that someone brought up to me, which maybe is Kristaps Porzingis, who we'll get to soon enough, but even him, I don't know.
Yeah, that was the first guy that came to my mind, and even then it's probably a little bit of a stretch.
Yep, I agree. All right, we got number 7.
7 is an interesting one, and again, we touched on this guy before, so it'll be interesting to see your thoughts. Even though I had Luka Doncic above this guy, I've had them very much tied together the whole time, and therefore the number 7 pick is the number 1 pick in the 2018 draft. Our guy, the big fella, Deandre Ayton.
Hey, some Suns love. I have Deandre Ayton 9, so I'm not that much lower on him than you are. The guys I have above him, I think, are special. So this is not an indictment of DeAndre Ayton at all.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the thing about Ayton, and I've always viewed him as more of a high risk, high reward kind of guy, and that's just what scares me about him. Is I do think there's a chance that he's not going to be, a star.
Yeah, and I think until he plays an NBA game or two, we won't really be able to say much about that. But again, I would just touch on what we did with Doncic. Clear line there. Where you wouldn't take, even though he is a number 1 pick in a draft, you wouldn't take any of those guys that we've previously mentioned before him, maybe other than Luka, depending on how high or low you are on both of those guys. But I think it's encouraging to say when you look at this list, and I can pretty comfortably say that I would take him over everyone that I'm going to mention afterwards. So that's pretty high. It's 7 on a redraft, but that's of 4 classes together of some pretty incredible players already. So definitely no shade here with Ayton being at number 7 in this draft.
No, the shade is going towards a certain player who plays for the Utah Jazz, who I'm not even taking next. And if there's any Utah fans listening now, they're gonna stop listening when I mention my next pick.
All right, we'll jump in. The number 8 pick, I believe we're up to.
Yeah, we're on the number 8 pick, and I'm taking Lonzo Ball.
Wow.
Here's the thing about Lonzo. My concerns about him going into the NBA were that he wasn't going to be able to play defense and that he wasn't going to be able to shoot. One of those concerns absolutely came to fruition.
Very much so.
Yeah, but the other one was exactly the opposite. He was an incredible defender. He did everything besides score the ball incredibly well.
Yeah, I was very low on how his defense was going to translate as well, and I guess like you touched on before, makes me look pretty silly right now. I was more confident in his shooting translating actually, which kind of doubles down on that theory almost.
Yeah, it is weird. I was the same way. And just to defend my choice of Lonzo Ball over whom I assume you're going to take next, and whom I imagine a bunch of people are mad at us for not taking already. I value so much what I think Lonzo Ball can do for a winning team, because I don't think he needs the ball in his hands. I think he just plays awesome defense. He can be a secondary playmaker. He can just do so many things. I kind of describe him as being like the guard version of Draymond Green.
Yep.
I just think that if you're just building a team out of thin cloth, it's that guy's going to help you. You don't have the wrong initiator because he doesn't have to be your initiator. So I value that over sometimes a more maybe like all-star production-wise kind of guy who I think you're probably going to take next and who people are probably mad at me about.
Don't be so sure, Max.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
I'll just say on Lonzo, I had him a little bit lower than you because I'm just, I'm pretty worried about that shooting. I think we'll see an improvement, but it's starting from a pretty low bar from his rookie season. And the small knee procedure isn't just a small knee procedure for many guards. Eric Bledsoe is the prime example of how that can keep reoccurring. So I am a little lower on Lonzo after starting from a pretty high spot with him. So that would be all I'd have to say on him. However, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit and draft at number 9, the 4th pick in the 2015 draft, Kristaps Porzingis. Okay. Explain. I really like Kristaps. He'd probably be even higher if it wasn't for the current ACL injury. I just couldn't justify him falling any lower than this for mine anyway. There is another guy who you've obviously teased a little bit that's probably going to come next now, I would imagine. But again, using the up against the wall method, I'd still go for the upside of a guy like Kristaps over anyone else after in this draft. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable despite the knee injury, taking a guy with that much, star power this low in the redraft.
Yeah, for me, so Kristaps is 12th for me, which, I mean, it seems low, but it's really not low with how good these players are.
Yeah.
My problem is just that, even before the ACL, I was already worried about him. He's just not a normally built human being. He just doesn't look like someone who's going to stay healthy.
Yep.
But if he does, I mean, he could be the best player in this whole damn list because he can protect the rim and he can shoot. I mean, that guy, he's a freak.
Yeah, I guess like we touched on with Jaren before, like, you know, mentioning Kristaps in that conversation, you know, maybe not quite with the volume that Jaren did in those couple of Summer League games, but he is that, you know, unicorn, what that term is built for. He is that type of player that can really fit the modern NBA.
And he's
7'2".
And he's much more offensively talented than Jaren Jackson is for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like that pick. It's just I'm just too nervous. That's why I'm a risk averse human being.
That's fair enough.
Okay, so it's time. We have to do it. Here's the thing about Donovan Mitchell, and I know people are going to think this is because of, you know, the whole Twitter fights. It's not that. I think Donovan Mitchell is really, 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 really good. Obviously he is. He's awesome. But his rookie year was, I'm sorry, it was overrated. It just was. He was only semi-efficient. He's his three-point shooting, I think he shot 34% from three. It was fine. It wasn't excellent. His finishing around the rim was pretty damn good, but he didn't get to the line very much. He doesn't draw contact because he has those crazy length finishes, which is great, but if you're not getting to the line, that's a significant problem.
Yeah, I agree. This appears to be the third, I should say, player that we have in the exact same spot on our big boards. I believe we both had Karl Anthony Towns at 2, Luka Doncic at 5, and now Mitchell at 8. Okay. Obviously, with the way we've both drafted, it means that, quite ironically, he actually falls to 10 in our redraft. But, you know, I think that's still around about where he deserves to be. We will get some hate if there are any Jazz fans listening. I'm sure there's not. So, yeah, I think when you compare him to a guy like Booker and the guys that we've mentioned above, there's still some slight concerns there. We should definitely note, though, like with Booker, he was the 13th pick in his 2017 draft. So the Jazz have definitely hit a beauty there, but there's definitely some concerns, and we don't want to overhype just one season just yet. It's a bit of a watch this space one with Donovan, I think.
I agree, and I also think there are some people who are automatically assuming he's going to be like a lead primary initiator, but I don't know why. I see the same people assuming that who say that Booker can't pass, and if you watch their seasons last year or even look at their stats, that's just, you know, woefully wrong. Booker was a better playmaker than Donovan Mitchell was last year, with worse teammates.
Yeah, and I think it just shows how much people value winning. Because I think the same conversations had about guys like Booker and Mitchell, but they go in completely different directions. And as you've said, it's not entirely fair, I don't think. So, you know, what we're doing with Mitchell with just one season in the bank and kind of projecting that all these things are going to happen for him for the rest of his career is kind of the opposite of what people tend to do with Booker, with kind of 3 seasons now in the bank of being a pretty effective offensive NBA player. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see that kind of Twitter rivalry continue, and hopefully as the Suns start to win more games, the conversation might shift a little bit towards, you know, our Suns corner, let's say.
And yeah, I hope so. Just one last point that I have to make is, just give yourself a thought experiment. Switch Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker last year teams, and just think about what it would look like. I just think it would be. It's just interesting to me. Anyway, your pick.
We're up to number 11 in the redraft, Max, and I am taking the 3rd pick in the 2016 draft, and that is Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics.
Ooh, I like it.
I stopped short of putting him ahead of Donovan Mitchell in my list, because, you know, I do really like Mitchell as a player. I loved him as a prospect as well. So there's definitely no hate from me coming to Mitchell because of that rivalry with Booker. But, you know, Jaylen Brown, again, is that prototypical NBA wing. I think he's shown a lot of two-way potential on the Celtics. And I think when you're assessing him and Tatum and looking at stats, you kind of have to take into account, you know, the team that they play on and the role that they're contributing for a very successful playoff team, one that kind of everyone expects to maybe go to the finals next year. So the counting stats may not add up quite as well to guys like Donovan Mitchell and things when you look at points per game and stuff. But, you know, watching a guy like Jaylen Brown, you can just see that he kind of oozes potential, and probably even more importantly has convinced me of a few things that I was worried about as a draft prospect in terms of his kind of offensive game and, how that might translate in the NBA. So, yeah, I'm pretty high on a guy like Jalen.
Yeah, I have him 11th, so I'm not far behind you. And just kind of to add on to your point, something that's nice about a guy like Jaylen Brown, and also one of the reasons I mentioned why I took Jason Tatum, is that it's very, very, very easy to build around a guy like that because he's just a wing who can shoot. And that's just, that's like what you want around your teams,
Exactly.
And also to kind of compare that to a guy like Donovan Mitchell, like I think that I have Donovan Mitchell ahead of Jaylen Brown by 3 spots. I think Donovan Mitchell will be better than Jaylen Brown. But if Donovan Mitchell and Jaylen Brown both just become like, solid starters but not super duper stars, Jaylen Brown will be more useful just by virtue of the position he plays.
Yep, I agree with that. Which brings us, I believe, to the 12th pick, Max.
All right, I get my 10th overall prospect at number 12. I got Trae Young here.
Very nice. You must be happy with that.
I'm very happy with this. He had a bit of a controversial summer league. I don't know why. I do know why, because he was awful in Utah. But once he got to Vegas, I thought he was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's one of those cases where getting those cobwebs out early in the lesser summer league without as many eyes was definitely an advantage to Trae because he looked a more comfortable player when he got to Vegas.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have to really dig into him deeply because last week we talked about him quite a bit with Cole.
We did. Quickly
sum up what we talked about with Cole is that if Trae hits his upside, he could be a game breaker just because of his shooting ability and his vision. Like he could be one of those guys that you just build your entire team around because his offense is that good. David, who you got? Number 13.
13, I have a guy that I had just behind Jaylen Brown on my list, and for many of the same reasons, even though the productivity is probably even less, so you're looking still more at potential here. I have the number 2 pick in the 2016 draft, Brandon Ingram.
Woo! I have him at 19, so that's a big jump.
Ooh, that's one that we definitely differ on. Definitely willing to note, as I just touched on, that he hasn't done a lot productivity-wise in the NBA to suggest maybe being taken this high, but we are still talking about some pretty raw guys here and some pretty young guys. I'm very much going with potential here. There's kind of another line in my big board here where I start to take guys based on what they might still be able to do in the NBA versus, a couple of guys who were either recently drafted or that have shown enough of what I think they're going to do in the NBA, whereas I think Ingram still has some room to grow. So, and, rightly or wrongly here, I really start to look at, NBA circles and how people think of guys like Brandon Ingram and how front offices view Brandon Ingram. I think they've been, the Lakers have been very adamant about not moving Brandon Ingram, and this was a point that came up on Twitter in a completely separate conversation last week about really, as amateur talent evaluators as we are, we only get half of the picture, or maybe not even half. The front offices and real draft guys are definitely getting to see these guys compete every day in camps and in practice workouts rather than just on the NBA floor. So I'm still in on Ingram's potential, partly because of how I rated him as a draft prospect and also partly because of how his own team seems to rate him.
Yeah, I think that last point you made is a very, very good one. I actually, when I did my final big board for this draft, I included Lonnie Walker, Kevin Knox, and I think Colin Sexton in my final tiers saying guys I don't like but other people like, so I refuse to not rank them because other people like them, and I'm not smart enough to think that I don't know everything.
Yeah, I think it's something that you have to be wary of because, particularly guys like us just can't know the full picture. So you've kind of got to use little clues, and I've always liked to use the little clues that front offices, drop in other areas of what we try and predict sometimes too. So I'm definitely a firm believer in that.
So I'm going to go kind of the opposite. Same draft, later pick, number 7 overall pick. He's shown more, but probably has less upside, and that's Jamal Murray.
Yep.
Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray, I value shooting so much, and I think Jamal Murray has that kind of potential to be a game-breaking shooter. He's also got some more athleticism than you think. He has the potential to develop into a really, really good offensive player. Defense is a bit of a question mark. He's almost sort of like a Devin Booker light.
He is, and he's a perfect perfect fit, I should say, for that kind of team that they're building in Denver because he can be a lead guard with how much passing they have at other positions.
Yeah, that's a great point.
The defense, not so much, maybe, but who knows what Denver are going to do.
I would say he fits in well with the rest of them, and the fact that they don't play any defense, like he does that well.
exactly.
All right, what do you got next?
Yeah, I'll just note on Jamal Murray that I had Lonzo Ball sandwiched in between Ingram and Murray on my big board, and I took Murray just before Trae Young, probably on what you touched on, just of what he's done so far in the NBA versus, I guess, question marks on what Trae Young might be able to do. So that's kind of where my evaluation at this point in the draft has come in. But my next pick is the number 15th pick in the redraft, and the number 6 pick in the 2018 class, and that is Mohamed Bamba.
Okay, I like Bamba. I have him the next spot behind a guy who I'm going to take after you, but explain Bamba real quick.
Anyone who's taken any notice of my kind of draft evaluation or any talk that I had about the 2018 draft before it happened, I was very high on Bamba, and that's kind of where he slots in this redraft. I'm a firm believer in his ceiling in the NBA being very unique, probably kind of like we discussed with Kristaps Porzingis. I think he has the potential, I should say, to become one of those 5-out guys on offense at incredible size, and a really kind of elite defensive rim protector. So I'm kind of banking on that potential here, given that he hasn't played an NBA game yet.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't think Bamba's shown us anything in Summer League or like a reason to drop him. I think he was fairly impressive. He wasn't like standout, but he was good. I like Bamba. Like I said, I had him next. And this next guy who I'm going to take, I actually had him behind Bamba in the pre-draft process. This is one of the few adjustments that I made.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's just Wendell Carter Jr. I just thought he was so impressive in Summer League. Like he was enough to raise a spot or two for me.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, we've joked about making kind of harsh, quick decisions based on 4 Summer League games, but I think one thing I've noticed you've said in the past in relation to Summer League is that there are things to be got from those few games and that small sample size. And if you had queries around someone like Wendell Carter, he definitely showed that he can do a few things and would justify, maybe switching him a position with Bamba, but nothing too drastic.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things you're trying to do is figure out what a guy can do in the NBA from college, not what he's doing in college. So I think the most valuable thing you can see in Summer League is what a guy looks like when he's not in whatever ecosystem he's in.
So I'm looking at my big board here. We're up to number 17 in the draft. This was a really interesting exercise for me, talking about Bamba and Carter, who I had in that order on my big board as well, followed by this guy who's been in the NBA for 3 seasons now, has shown a lot of what we'd expect Bamba and Carter to do, but had probably a disappointing season last season, but I'm still a firm believer in him being a big contributor in the NBA, and that is the number 11 pick in the 2015 draft, Miles Turner.
Whoa! I have him number 32.
Wow, that's probably going to be the biggest gulf that we find between our big boards, I would imagine.
Yeah. Wow. All right.
Yeah, as I said, I'm banking on the potential of Bamba and Carter versus what Turner's already shown. Definitely happy to admit that he had a down year this past season with the Pacers, but I think their projection and what they did this year was a big reason for that. They were kind of a big playoff contender who didn't put heavy minutes or heavy reps into Turner in certain situations that he's not comfortable with. But probably another case of a guy that I was really high on around his draft and definitely after his rookie season. So I'm still banking on a little bit of potential there and projecting out that he might turn it around this next year. Definitely happy to admit that it's quite high when you look at some of the guys that are going to come after, though.
Yeah, I don't hate Miles Turner or anything. He can shoot and he can protect the rim a little bit with his valuable skills. I just kind of feel like, and maybe I'm wrong with this, maybe he'll make it look stupid, but I kind of feel like he showed this year that the upside might not quite be there.
That's fair. One to probably come back to in 12 months' time, maybe.
Yeah, we'll maybe do this again in a year. That'd be fun. My next one's going to be Jonathan Isaac, the number 6 pick in the 17 draft.
Yep.
I think because he was injured and sort of anonymous playing on that awful Orlando team, his season was actually a little underrated. He was actually a really good defender last season. I think that there's almost no doubt he's going to be a good defender going forward. The question with him is obviously going to be the offense. It's going to be, is he going to be able to do anything besides shoot open threes? And is he even going to be able to do that? Because he has to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But the defense, it's there. I think he's going to be switchable. He's going to be able to protect the rim to an extent. I think he's going to be a monster on that end. It's just going to be the question with him is just, can he bring the value on the offensive end?
Yeah, I have him at 22 on my big board, and that's just because I'm not a massive believer in Isaac. It's obviously, as you've noted, it's a lot on potential at the moment. There's still definitely a lot there to work with, but personally, I'm just not that high on Isaac actually translating it and becoming a really effective NBA player. So, yeah, I'm not banking on as much there with him, but there's definitely a lot there to work with for sure.
Fair enough. Who you got next?
Might be another surprise for you here. I'm not too sure where you might have this guy, Max, but 19, I am taking the number 7 pick from the 2017 draft, Lauri Markkanen.
A little bit of a surprise. I had him 26, but I don't think you're crazy. Explain.
Okay. At this point of my big board, Max, I'm kind of looking for guys that have proven something already, or that have, from the 2018 class, have a really solid projection to do something really well in the NBA. And I just don't think there's any doubting that Lauri in his rookie season proved that he has an NBA-ready skill, and that's as a shooter. He was very effective in that role at pretty high volume for a rookie too. So, something around 37% or something, I think he shot from 3 last year on a pretty god-awful team too. So I really like his fit with Wendell Carter for the Bulls. And he probably showed in his rookie season that he can do a few other things too. I think he was, he wasn't awful on defense from what I saw. And, he can put the ball on the floor a little bit too, which if he proves to be a really effective NBA three-point shooter, he's going to need to be able to do when teams try and attack him on closeouts and things. So, I'm just going with a really solid NBA skill for Lauri with potential to build around that too.
Yeah, I don't disagree with a single thing that you said. For me with Lauri, who I like a lot, but I just don't really see him, I guess, being like a superstar. I think there's like no chance of that. I guess maybe that's unfair. It's just kind of my evaluation of him. I don't know what superstar Lauri Markkanen looks like. So kind of without that upside, he falls a bit for me, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably just, I guess, a difference in how we've looked at this exercise, I suppose. I kind of looked at it as, even though it is 4 draft classes bunched together, generally around 18, 19 in a single draft, you're really looking for solid starters or solid role players for your team and something you can bank on, and that's definitely what I see in Lauri.
Yeah, I'm trying to balance it, I guess, but maybe I'm doing the balancing wrong. I don't know.
No, but you're not. There's so much talent still left out of these classes, so when you jam 4 classes together, you're probably not making an incorrect decision by still banking on trying to pick a star here.
No, a lot of it's just going to come down to your own personal opinion, and I'm interested to see what you think about my next pick and why you have Lauri over him. And that's John Collins. He was the number 19 pick in last year's draft.
Yep.
It's for him. Summer League did matter for me. I actually think sometimes Summer League can matter more for second-year players than for first-year players. Mm-hmm. I was just so impressed by the shooting. I was like, holy shit, if that guy can shoot that way, his upside just flies through the roof. I mean, he's already an incredible energy offensive rebounder guy. He's as crazy athleticism. He dunks on people. He's very comparable to Marvin Bagley in that way. But the shooting for me is what really elevated him. I think he's a lot higher on this list than he would have been before Summer League.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he definitely has more strings to his bow than someone like Lauri, but just not quite as good at any of them as what Lauri already is as an NBA three-point shooter. So another one that in 12 months could look really silly from my perspective, with John Collins looking like a much more effective NBA player than, say, a Markkanen, but it would really bank on at least one of those things that he's kind of showing flashes of really translating to the NBA, and then maybe 1 or 2 others being worked on still.
Yeah, sometimes I tend to fall in love with my conception of what a player will be in 3 years rather than what he actually is right now. Probably to my detriment. All right, what's your next one?
So, Max, we're at pick 21 here, and pretty deep in the podcast, so I think we should, maybe just alternate the next few picks and maybe have a discussion after 5 or so. What do you think?
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's do that.
All right, well, I'll jump straight in. I'm going to take a guy who went number 9 in the 2017 draft. So with pick 21, I'm taking Dennis Smith Jr.
Okay, I had him 28th. I'm not as big of a fan as you are, but I understand it. I am going to go with Marvin Bagley III, the number 2 overall pick last.
Yep, I have him in my big board, but a little bit lower. So number 23, that leaves me with, I'm going to take OG Anunoby, who was quite low in the last draft, but has shown quite a lot. He was the number 23 pick, actually, maybe due to some health concerns, but I've got him at 23 in our redraft.
And I think the reason why I'm taking my next guy over him is because I just like the shooting a little bit more and value shooting more than defense, and that's our very own Mikal Bridges.
I was wondering when he was going to pop up. So that's 24 in our redraft, to recap for people listening. Takes us to 25. I am going to take SGA from the last draft class.
You liked him before the Summer League. He was great in Summer League, but you liked him before that.
And I have him just above Mikal in my big board here, which is very much a reflection of where I had them ranked pre the 2018 draft. And I guess just to round that out, they're the last two guys from the 2018 draft. I kind of cut it off there for guys that I had in the equation for this redraft.
Real quick, now that we got through like 5 of those.
Yep.
I just wanted to defend Bagley, and I want to hear your take on this. So one of the reasons why I have Bagley a little higher, I think, than you do is because I'm thinking that this exercise is being like, team neutral, so he's not on Sacramento. I think it really does suck for him that he ended up there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I've probably put a little bit of a projection into how things are going to look on the Kings next year with where I've rated him. I did slot him in at 23 on my big board, so I didn't totally rule him out, but he was a guy that I was very reluctant to have too high in my pre-draft predictions for Bagley. So he's kind of, again, slotted in on my big board just above SGA and Mikal for that reason. But I'm not overly high on his role in the NBA. Just I've got some real concerns, Max, around like what position he's going to play and where he's going to be effective, and how you then build an effective winning team around that. That's probably my main concern with Bagley.
Oh, those are all very valid concerns. There's a lot to be concerned about with him. But for me, it's just kind of that tail end upside I just can't get over. Like, I just think if for somehow that guy develops like a crazy handle and a shot off the dribble, like he could be really freakish.
Yep.
So we're what are we at, number 26 now?
We are at 26, and your pick.
Okay, I'm going to go with, this is a tough one. This is close. I think I'm going to go with Josh. I'm going to take Josh Jackson here.
Interesting.
So I think Suns fans are going to be kind of mad at us for where we have Josh Jackson in this draft.
Yep.
But there's some things about him that make me nervous. Like, if he doesn't develop the shot, I think it's going to be really hard for him to kind of open up the rest of his offensive game. And also for a guy who's supposed to be a defensive player, he was really bad on defense last year. So I need to see a lot out of him this year. I'm a little nervous about him.
I kind of agree with a lot of that sentiment. We kind of had him pretty similar positions. In terms of getting mad, I think I had him even a little lower. So if anyone wants to get mad at either of us, it should probably be me. But
at David.
That brings me to the 27th pick, and another guy that a lot of people should be low on, but as a former number one pick, you kind of have to squeeze into a redraft here. I'm going Markelle Fultz.
That's a good pick. I had him 23 overall, just behind Josh Jackson 22. So some of this is just the way this is going.
Yep. So 28.
I got Miles Bridges, who I debated over Josh Jackson, but I just think there's a little less upside there.
Yeah, I'm not. I've never been too high on Miles. Also, didn't study him. I think we've touched on this before in the pod of just with the Suns picks, I didn't actually study either of the Bridges all that much pre-draft. So
for me, a lot of it comes down to Miles' position. Like, it's a super valuable position. If he works out there, he's going to be really valuable.
Yep. I'm going to sneak in at 29 a guy that was actually taken at 40 in his draft in 2015. A real great story here for a team that doesn't really value draft picks, and that's Josh Richardson.
That's a great pick. That's someone who you know is going to be good on defense. Like that's definitely not an upside pick. That's a solid, he's going to contribute pick.
Yeah, exactly. Which brings us to our last pick, Max. So you get the honor of squeezing one last guy into this redraft.
Oh, this is a brain versus heart sort of thing, because my brain says Frank Ntilikina because I know he's going to be a good defender, but I can't. My heart says De'Aaron Fox. I just love De'Aaron Fox. He didn't have the greatest rookie year, but he had some moments. He had some clutch shots. I think he had like 3 or 4 game winners or game tying shots, and I believe in that kid. He's such a good kid. He's such a hard worker. He has elite quickness. I think he'll figure the jump shot out. I think he'll be good.
Yeah, I had a few others over him, but yeah, I think it's for the number 30th pick. I think it's worthwhile doing. So that rounds it out, Max. So I'll give a quick recap. We've kind of gone through that quickly. So just to run it through for all the listeners from start to finish, we had Ben Simmons at the top at number 1, Jason Tatum at number 2, Karl Towns at 3, Devin Booker at 4, followed by Doncic at 5. Jackson at 6, our guy Deandre Ayton at 7. Then a couple of existing guys, Lonzo Ball at 8, Porzingis at 9, Donovan Mitchell at 10, Jaylen Brown at 11, Trae Young at 12, Brandon Ingram at 13, Jamal Murray at 14, Mohamed Bamba at 15, Carter at 16, Turner at 17, Jonathan Isaac at 18, Laurie Markin at 19, and John Collins at 20. Then we quickly ran through the last 10 names there, so I'll just mention those guys again, starting with Dennis Smith Jr. at 21, followed by Bagley, Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, SGA, Josh Jackson, 26 for Suns fans, Markelle Fultz, Miles Bridges, Josh Richardson, and rounding it out, De'Aaron Fox at number 30 in our redraft.
I just can't believe I didn't get Luka Doncic somehow. I'm so mad about that.
He's with me. I got him and Ayton. I got the ultimate package for Suns fans.
Yeah, that's pretty
before
fun.
the draft. Yeah.
Oh, I got Booker and Mitchell, so I can unite the Twitter thing.
Very nice. I've been taking some notes as we've been running through as well, Max. So I'll just touch on those really quickly. There are 4 Phoenix guys in this top 30. I don't think you can argue that none of them really deserve to be in there either, to be perfectly honest. Maybe some might argue Josh Jackson, but 4 guys, and that's 2 more than any other team, which, what we were trying to do with this exercise, following on from our previous episode, is show that, the future's bright for the Suns. There might be some tough, lean years, but, Atlanta had 2, Boston had 2, Chicago had 2, Dallas, the Lakers, Orlando, Philly, and Sacramento all had 2 guys in there. So, touching on a lot of those teams were in that, bottom tier that we discussed with Cole last episode of, the next batch of teams that might rise up to the top. So we've definitely got a chance with the Phoenix guys there.
Yeah, and to Cole's point last episode, what really matters is quality, not quantity. So it's nice that we have 4 of these guys, but what's going to matter is whether or not Devin Booker or Ayton can, in 2 years, be at the top of this list, not at 4 and whatever.
That's a very good point. It's looking like the 2017 draft just edged out the 2018 draft with 11 guys over 18 with 10. 15 had 5 guys and 2016 only had 4. The lowest picked was Josh Richardson, as I mentioned before, was pick 40 in the 2015 draft. And the highest guy not picked, who I thought about trying to squeeze in there, which we'll jump into now. So the highest guy not picked was D'Angelo Russell. Some guys that I had just outside or just inside my big board, actually, that fell out when we did the redraft. I had Taurean Prince, Frank Ntilikina, as you mentioned, DeJounte Murray, and Kuzma as well. I had. Who else did you have just outside, Max?
So I actually had, like you said, Ntilikina inside. I had him 29th overall.
Yep.
And then I'll just run through Josh Hart. I had up there. I think he's been really impressive. Taurean Prince, Kelly Oubre, Fred VanVleet, Domantas Sabonis, Pascal Siakam, and as you mentioned, DeJounte Murray.
Yeah, interesting. So that rounds out the exercise, Max. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was fun. That went pretty smoothly. I thought that was fun. Maybe people on Twitter are going to scream at us because they didn't like the way we picked it, but I thought it went okay.
As I said, there's going to be a lot of different opinions on this, but the end goal was to kind of look at the Suns. We are a Suns podcast after all, and there's definitely guys combining those 4 drafts that should be up there based on where they were picked. But there's a couple of surprises as well. Devin Booker obviously being number 1 from how low he was picked in his draft.
Yep, and one thing I'll just ask before you yell at us, just try this exercise yourself. It's not an easy thing to rank these guys. It really isn't.
Exactly, yeah. Definitely try before you add us. Definitely, Max.
Let's throw this to 7 seconds or less. This is the segment where one of us asks the other 3 questions for which the other has not prepared and only has 7 seconds to respond. David, it's your turn this week to ask me questions.
It is, and I had some fun with this. Obviously, Suns themed. And looking at what we just discussed. So first question, I'll dive right in. Which Suns move from the last 4 drafts is the biggest mistake in your opinion? And I'll give you your options here so you don't have to rack your brain. You've got picking Booker in 15, picking Bender in 16, the Chris trade, picking Chris then at number 8 in the 2016 draft, Josh Jackson in the 2017 draft. In the 18 draft, you could also choose between taking DeAndre Ayton or the Bridges trade.
Just taking Devin Booker. I just don't get the logic. No, it's for me, it's the Chris trade. It was fine in the moment. I was high on Chris, but I mean, if we're looking in hindsight, it was the biggest mistake, I think, pretty clearly.
Interesting. I wondered whether you were going to say Ayton there just because of your Doncic love, but
no, I understand the Ayton thing. He has the upside. I get it. I'm not going to call something a mistake that we have no returns on yet.
All right. Well, question 2, and this is an interesting one with the Chris trade to give you options here. So, if I gave you a do-over on the biggest mistake, so you've said it is the Chris trade, what would you do instead? So you've kind of got 2 paths here, Max. You can either still do the trade and pick somebody else at number 8, or you can hold pat and I guess hold your draft picks at 13 and 28, I believe, plus keep Bogdanovic as well. So which path are you going to take there?
Oh, God. I don't think I'd make the trade because, like, just looking at this list, Jamal Murray went 7th. There's just no one that I would want. So I guess I stay on pat, and I can't even take Taurean Prince. He was 12th. Shit, I don't even know what the hell I would do, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's not much there to choose from, which I guess justifies maybe why the Suns were happy to make the trade. But I guess without even picking guys, you've still held on to Bogdanovic, which would be an interesting one for the Suns.
Yeah,
now.
It's probably more valuable than anything else they could have gotten in that draft.
Exactly. Do you want to throw maybe one name out for either the 13th pick or the 28th pick there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, DeJounte Murray if he learns how to shoot, he could be a pretty nice partner with Booker in the backcourt with his defense.
Yep, I think Bogdan and Murray together cancelling that trade out would probably be a better move for the Suns in hindsight.
Yep.
All right, that takes us to our last question, and a quick one to finish. It's 2020 Max, and the Suns are in the playoffs. I'm going to ask you how many Suns first-round picks from the last 4 drafts are on the roster, and I'll set the over-under at 3.5.
So we're assuming they're in the playoffs.
They're in the playoffs, so they may have traded a couple away for new pieces or stuff to get them there. So who are you very confident at the end of the day is going to be on the next playoff team for the Suns out of Booker, Bender, Chris, Bridges, Ayton, and Josh Jackson?
The only one who I'll say that I'm really confident in, like very, very confident, is Devin Booker. The next level of confidence would be Ayton, and then a whole other level down would be Bridges, and then another level down would be Josh and Bender. So I guess I would it was over under 3.5, right? I guess I'll take the under.
Yep, sounds like you're taking the under there. So I'll put that one in the vault and come back to it if we're still doing this pod in a few years' time.
Yeah, that'd be a fun one to look back on. A lot of these will be fun to look back on. This entire episode will be fun to look back on.
Very true.
Well, cool. Thank you so much, David. I think that's it for us. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Seriously, if you could just give us a review, it'd really help. That really boosts people up the iTunes rating, so we would really appreciate that. If you want to give me a follow, I'm at MaxMCC11 on Twitter. David is at The 4 Point Play on Twitter, and our podcast is at 7SOLPod on Twitter. David, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Max. That was a lot of fun.
It was fun. Until next time, guys.